So, a buddy of mine suggested I should check the float settings on these Weber carburetors. That might be contributing to the rough running condition on this Porsche 914. So, I've read a little bit about it. It's fairly easy to adjust, and let's take a look at that. So, turn the light on. On the passenger side, I've already adjusted this one. Basically, all I did is take the bracket off for the linkage. It's basically two screws that hold it on there. And then, of course, I pinched off the fuel line and took it off. And then there's four screws that hold the cap on the carburetor. And I noted that those were actually a little pretty loose. I mean, I didn't check those when I got the carbs, but I didn't think I would need to. So now that I have the linkage loose, I'll be able to just pull the linkage out of that bracket over there. Well, I'll have to take the spring off, and I can leave the bracket on because it attaches to the cap, I believe. At least that's the way it was on the passenger side. Let me look. It might be different on this side. Yeah. Just those two screws. One under here holds a bracket on, and the other one here. So just leave the bracket on the top portion while I adjust the float. So let me get that to the bench and I'll show you how that works. All right, so we got it off. You can see the bracket is still on there. That's fine. One less thing to do. So now you can see the float and the valve. So when the fuel is low, it opens up the valve, allows fuel to flow through the inlet. And then when the bowl fills up, it's got a little valve there that closes. Now, first thing you do, according to the instructions I found on 914 World, is check to make sure that this is actually cutting off when the bowl is full. So with the float in the high position, you try to blow through that, and you shouldn't be able to blow air through it. And then I went ahead and opened it up and make sure that you can blow through it, and that way you know the valve is working. It's not clogged up or whatever. All right, now the two measurements. The first measurement you take with the ball and the float in the low position, and I'm going to have a hard time doing this and holding the camera. So that dimension right there should be 12.1 millimeters from the gasket. By the way, the gasket should come off with the top portion of the carburetor. And then with the float in the high position and the valve closed, just barely touch it and it closes it. That gap between the gasket and the float should be 3.6 millimeters. So I measured the low position on the float using my, see if I can get it to sit here. Probably not. They hold it like that. Well, anyway, use my my gauge here set for 12 millimeters. And anyway, you get the picture. And then to measure the high position, because I couldn't really get that gauge in there, actually just stacked up on my feeler gauges to get 3.6, because that's pretty tight in there. And that's where I found on the other carb that the float, that gap there was not even, it was probably at least a half a millimeter too wide. So to adjust that little tang, they call it, a little bent portion that's going through that, that's actually closing the valve, you just very carefully adjust it, in order to get the float higher, you would actually squeeze it a little. Okay, so let me adjust this one, and then we'll see what the results are. So my theory on these floats is, when you put these cars with carburetors in a race trailer and the gasoline evaporates out of the bowl, you're bouncing down the road and the float is bouncing and it slowly bends and loses those adjustments. That being said, this may not have been adjusted properly from the manufacturer or the distributor, who knows, but I got it as close as I can get it now, so let me stick that back in there. Well, I think it might have helped. I don't know. Get it out and road test it this weekend. You know, couldn't have hurt nothing to adjust the floats.